Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rinkus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Jenni Johnson, the founder of Jenni Johnson Breast, Bottle, and Beyond. Jenni is a registered nurse, an international board-certified lactation consultant, and a craniosacral body worker with a passion for helping families navigate breastfeeding, bottle feeding, pumping, weaning, and everything in between. Jenni is especially passionate about addressing birth trauma and body tension, tongue and lip ties, helping women get the most out of pumping, and ensuring that families truly receive the support they need to meet their feeding goals. She is such a blessing to families in Northeast Wisconsin as she offers in-office support in Green Bay, Appleton, and Antigo, as well as mobile support where she'll come to your home. Outside of her work, Jenni loves to travel, read, and sing, plus she's been married to her high school sweetheart for nearly 35 years. We can't wait for you to learn from her, so let's get started with today's conversation.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. We are back here with Jenni, and we had an awesome conversation in the last couple episodes about all things breastfeeding. If you guys haven't listened to those, definitely take a listen to those as well. In this episode, we're going to be talking all about pumping and all things pumping. And Jenni is actually, she's an expert in breastfeeding and in that sort of field, but she is definitely passionate about helping moms learn to pump and how to use that in their everyday life. So the world of pumps is overwhelming. There's Absolutely. A lot of options out there.
Too many.
Yeah. So where do you start? Where do you start to narrow down things?
So I start with clients by talking about why we're going to be pumping.
Sure.
I've got some stay-at-home moms that really don't need a full double pump. They don't need the full wearable. We can maybe get by with a manual pump.
That was me. Yeah, absolutely.
And there are some great manual pump options out there. And then there's other moms that, they're working 12-hour shifts and they need something that they can wear and pump while they're charting, pump while you're eating, on the run. So we really talk about what mom's needs are. In the world of pumps, we do talk about your workhorse pump. So if a mom is going to be separated from her baby full time, we really want her to have one good tabletop ready to drain every little dribble that we can get so that you have a healthy breast. And we then want to walk in and talk a little bit about those wearables, because they seem like the magic bullet and they don't work well for a lot of people. They don't always fit well. And because of the way that they're squeezed into the bra, it can actually put compression on the breast and decrease what you're getting out. So we really want to look at and talk about options. When we do a pump fitting, I always use a tabletop type pump. At the office, I have 2 Spectra pumps. One is the rechargeable and one is the plug-in. And that is what we use to do a fitting because we can see the milk moving. We can change out the parts pretty quickly and try different things. Where with the wearables, it's hard to see where that nipple and breast tissue are within the pump, and it can make it harder to get a good fit.
So you talk about, it just depends on what mom needs. So there's different options. What features should you be looking for when you're choosing a pump? Because there's different brands too.
Mm-hmm. And each brand sometimes has a couple different types of pumps. We want to look for a suction cycle that works similar to babies suck. I've seen to find that moms that we can kind of get that closer helps them drain the breast better when they're not with baby. Of course, when do we do that? Well, we have to see how baby sucks, right? So sometimes we get a pump ahead of time and it's not maybe the best fit for you, but we can usually hack them just a bit to figure out how to make it work better for you. When I worked at the hospital, moms would bring in pumps that I had no experience with. And I was never beyond sitting down at the table, pulling the pump out. Let's look at the booklet. Let's see what we can find. And I learned a lot about using pumps and like ways to use them differently in that space. And now I feel like we do the same thing. You know, we talk about options. Moms will actually send me a copy of their list of what's available, and we can talk through some of the better options. Most of the time, moms can get a pump through insurance. It's usually a basic level pump, and then you can upgrade to a different pump. So sometimes mom will upgrade to maybe that wearable, but then purchase that basic herself because the price is a little bit more accessible.
Do you have a favorite brand?
I don't. It really depends on the family. There are some better ones. I do like the Spectras. They seem to work fairly well. If a mom is going to be exclusively pumping, like she's never going to put baby to her body to feed, we may want to rent like a hospital grade so that we have that better, more durable suction. They're really rated for so many hours of work. So we want to make sure that we get a good sustainable pump. There's a couple other, like the Pumpables Genie seems to be a good option for some moms. And then the Baby Buddha is one that some moms enjoy. It has a very strong suction. So some moms, they feel like their eyeballs are getting sucked in. So we want to be careful too, because we don't want to damage our tissue with a too high of a vacuum. The fun part is I have some of them at the office that we can kind of look at and you can like feel the suction. The ones that are multi-user, I sanitize the parts between so you can actually try them. I have a couple wearables as well. But otherwise, even just holding them, touching them, you know, I feel like we don't get that chance to like really inspect a pump before we get one sent to us.
Well, you're investing in something. You want to know that you're going to like it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've had moms come in for pump fitting sessions. They bring in a tub of like 3, 4, 5 pumps that they've bought over the years or have gotten from a friend or trying this, trying that. And that too is so overwhelming because then you kind of need to help deconstruct what's going to work best and how they're going to feel about each one.
And I know in your office, you also have all the different flange sizes because when you get a pump, it comes with like 2 and you're like, oh, well, one of these must work for me.
That's
so
huge.
Talk to us about flanges because that's not always the case.
So the most exciting thing about flange fitting is that we actually have a study now. We have evidence-based information on how a flange can help remove milk from your body. And the study found that the smaller size is closer to the measurement of the tip of the nipple actually removes more milk more efficiently. So in the office, and I just ordered a new kind, so I'm going to have even a further expansion of product. But in the office, I have everywhere from size 10 to size 32 because some of the pump companies are still making very large sizes. And my motto is try before you buy. So in the pump kit, I have a few flanges that I don't sell, but I know that they're popular and moms want to try them. So I have those available. So the Pump and Pals is a full silicone kind of graduated, like 3 sizes in one kind of flange. And I think people think that that's like the magic one. They're like $30 for a pair. So I don't want you randomly buying things. So I'd let you try them.
Yeah. You've said like several different brands and I'm like, that was not around 10 years ago at all. You know, like even 8 years ago, whenever my youngest was born, it was 9 years ago. Like it's crazy how many options there are now. And I love that you're there to help navigate that.
How do you actually figure out what size is proper for a woman? Are you doing measuring? Are you hooking it up to a pump and seeing how it pulls? If somebody is pumping right now and they're listening to this, what are some signs that maybe their current flange is not the right fit?
Okay, so you're pumping right now. I want you to look down at your flanges. And if your nipple has swollen to fill the tunnel of that flange, or it's just hanging out in the middle, most likely that's too big. We found that the nipple touching the tunnel is important to increasing the oxytocin release, but we don't want it to swell to fill because then we're actually pulling and damaging tissue. So we measure you, the tip of the nipple, and I do the base too to kind of give us a range because everybody's nipple is different. Right to left are different. They're sisters, not twins. So they may need their own shoe size, right? So we measure the tip and the base. We kind of get an idea of where we're going to start. And it can be anywhere from like 2 millimeters smaller to 2 millimeters bigger than the size that we measure you at. And it's interesting because like trying them, it's only a millimeter difference. I will have a mom in a 15 millimeter, and then we put her in the 14 millimeter, and all of a sudden we see milk spraying. And it's like just a millimeter. Like, how can it make that big of a difference? And it really, truly impacts the drainage of that breast.
Does flanges change at all over time, or is it pretty consistent?
So it does change.
Oh, okay.
And many times, especially if mom has struggled getting baby to latch, there's trauma and kind of swelling. There's edema in that nipple. So many times we see that we start with a larger size and we may work our way down as time goes on, as swelling kind of settles in. I usually, if a mom is like, all of a sudden I'm getting that milk backup, I'm getting that milk stasis, we're getting to where we're thinking, oh, we might be getting into the mastitis space, I'll suggest a refit to be sure that we're in the right space. Now, sadly, insurance will send you parts for your pump, but the pump companies have not gotten on board with offering all of the size variations. So moms will end up getting a lot of the wrong size. So it's great to replace the tubing. It's great to replace backup, valve protections, the valves for your duckbills and all of that. But you may have to purchase and pay for those parts for the right size for you.
Other than cleaning like the flanges and the bottles and those types of things, if you breastfeed for, let's just say, a year and a half, do you need to be replacing other parts of the pump?
You do. And actually, it's about a 3-month process. Again, it depends on how much you're pumping. If you're an exclusive pumper, you're going to want to replace those parts probably every 2 months or so, just to make sure that we're keeping all of those little silicone parts working well. If you're, pump once or twice a month, we obviously don't need to replace them as often.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So going to a practical question that I always kind of laughed at and was like, I don't know the answer to this, but it seems ridiculous. In our last episode, we talked about mastitis, and we talked about how mastitis is more common when you're getting overfilled on a regular basis. Do you need to be pumping at night once baby is sleeping through the night?
That's a very loaded question.
It's one of those where you're like,
answers.
I just want to sleep, but at the same time, I don't want mastitis. So how do you find the balance?
So when a baby will naturally, gradually change their sleep pattern, your body should naturally and gradually adjust to that. However, you have a busy day and baby's really conked out, and all of a sudden you wake up and they've been sleeping for 7 hours and you're really full. That is when we get that milk stasis. That's when we get the junctions opening and milk kind of spilling into our breast tissue. That's kind of unavoidable. If a mother is noticing that nice gradual change and she wakes a little full, we don't have to get up and pump, because we don't want to encourage the body to make more milk than you need. Then we can end up in that overproduction space. I usually tell parents, we don't want the body to think the refrigerator is a twin. We don't want them to think that the freezer is that extra baby. We want to make those kind of slow, gradual changes in the amount of production to help prevent any discomfort and damage to tissue.
I feel like a lot of women do want a freezer stash just because they get nervous about something going wrong and them having to stop feeding or breast milk. So do you recommend having a freezer stash? And if so, how much? What are your thoughts on kind of easing a woman's nerves about all that?
And again, it really depends on the parent's goals. I've had a couple of parents that they pump for 6 months and then they stop pumping and then they have enough milk and they don't have to breastfeed or pump for the rest of the duration and babies get the milk. Then you've got the other moms that are back to work full time. They're nervous about, am I going to have enough? I tend to talk too about soothing that worry because by 6 months, we're introducing solid foods as well. So food is fun before 1, but we can use that to bridge some gaps if we're having some milk issues. I am not a fan of a freezer stash unless you want to invest in a generator as well. I've had too many families lose milk supplies because the power went out. Somebody accidentally shut the freezer off. We've had issues where I feel like that is more devastating than the worry of, will I have enough milk?
Yeah. It's called liquid gold for a reason.
For a reason, exactly. I mean, and there's ways to work through a defunct freezer stash. We use anything that's kind of slushy. We can know confidently that it wasn't completely thawed and we can use that milk. If it was completely thawed, we don't know how long. So we have to ditch all of that. And then anything that's solid frozen, we can refreeze. And then you just kind of feed that slushy stuff and then pump to replace what you had lost. And it can be a process. I want to help parents be in that confident space that they don't feel like they need the freezer stash. I feel like if you're going back to work full time, generally you're going to need about 45 ounces for a week. We forget that when we're away, we're pumping. We build this stash forgetting that we're going to be removing milk while we're away from baby. So I feel like we kind of create panic. So if you can kind of plan for like a couple weeks, a minimum of about 45 ounces a week, I feel like that can put you in a comfort space where you don't have to worry that you don't have anything and you're not buying another freezer to store all of that milk as well. Now, those moms that have a ton of milk, there's moms out there that aren't producing as much as they had hoped. So we definitely have the space of some milk sharing, but I want it to happen with healthy breast tissue because we don't know yet long term what does chronic mastitis do to a woman's breast over the rest of her life. What does overproduction do to a woman's breast tissue for the rest of her life?
Well, and you mentioned going back to work. So that's a pretty big population that are, they maybe are breastfeeding exclusively when they're home with their kiddos, and then they want to go back to work. So how do you kind of ease yourself into that mentally and physically? Like when should you start pumping and making sure that you feel comfortable with your pump, as well as families who are maybe going on a vacation or are planning to have date nights and just want to be able to have that pumping plan in place where baby can feed from a bottle. How far ahead of time for either of those circumstances should you be pumping and making sure baby is comfortable with a bottle?
So I like to just work on feeding at the body for 2 weeks. Like, let's just settle into a good pattern. Let's get mom on that healing track. Let's get baby kind of solidified with suck, swallow. And if we are struggling, if there was oral tissue that needed to be released, if there was tension that needed work, then we've got some wiggle room in there too. Somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks is a good point to introduce the bottle. It's kind of like a learned skill, right? Like this is something completely different for baby. So we work through how to introduce that bottle as well. And then somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks, our milk supply kind of settles a bit. Your body's not sure initially how many babies you had. The placenta comes off and it's like, here's your milk. Here you go. It's a whole bunch of it. You're going to have a little extra, but it's okay. And so we want to give that body a chance to settle down. Again, not wanting the refrigerator to look like a twin. So somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks when we feel like, I'm comfortable between feeds. I don't feel overly full. Now we're going to start playing with the pump. And it really is playing with it. We're not going to like worry about a full replacement of a feeding just yet. Most mothers have the most milk in the morning. So if baby feeds on one side, then we maybe practice single pumping on the other side. And then we build up to double pumping. And then we build up to pumping a whole feeding. And then we give that to somebody, and then they can put that in, the bottle and feed the baby the bottle. And we gradually get ourselves to that space. And then as time settles in, babies will tend to do clusters of feeds in the morning, a longer stretch midday, clusters of feeding at night, in the evening. And then at nighttime, we'll start to give you that 4 or 5 hour stretch. I always laugh. Parents are going to get 8 hours of sleep. It's just not going to be continuous.
Yeah.
It might be in 2 to 3 little chunks, but we're going to get you to some, better restful sleep. Then in the morning, again, the breast is really full. So then we can start to remove milk in those spaces where we're full or where baby is taking a longer nap. Midday, maybe we put the pump on an hour after baby goes down for their nap and then drain what we can. And then work our way up into that full feed. Anytime someone is feeding baby a bottle, the parent should be pumping that milk out.
There you go.
When it comes to bottles, that's also a whole new world of navigation.
Yes.
You could go through 10 different types of bottles to figure out what baby likes.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody do you have bottles at your office that you're helping with or not?
I have a large cabinet of bottles at the office.
Okay.
Yes.
So if somebody is like, I have no idea what type of bottle to get my baby, what are kind of either brands that typically are good ones that work well for a lot of families, or B, like what should you be looking at either in the bottle nipple size, things like that? How do you navigate this world?
I first tell parents, do not register for a ton of bottles. That's the perfect way to make sure that your baby does not like the one that you have 80 of,
Yes.
right? Like, don't put the money in. We'll get there. You have time. I used to tell people, first, I want you to look at your breast and then go to the bottle aisle. I want something that's similar to your breast shape so that it's similar to baby in their mouth. Now, once a baby latches to breast, they do change it a little bit, but I can guarantee you it does not look like most of the bottles on the market when it's in the baby's mouth. New guidelines are telling us that something in more of a peaked shape, if you make a triangle with your fingers, you put your thumbs together and you point your fingers together and you make a little mountain, that's what we want that nipple to look like. When we think about how a baby latches to breast tissue, they have a big wide open mouth. We don't want them sucking on a small little nipple and then trying to navigate back to breast. So there's a couple different brands they're improving. There is no standardization. There's no regulation on flow rate. It's kind of the Wild West when it comes to bottles. So it can be a little overwhelming. If baby is struggling, we definitely want to use a slower flow. I do like the Even Flow Balance. Has a regular and a wide option. That is a nice wide bottle. There's a little texture to it too. So if baby is struggling with tongue attachment, we're getting a better tongue attachment to that kind of roughed up space. The bottles that are coming with our Spectra pumps are a little bit of a wider like peak than that little like finger of some bottles. Lancino has some that their flow rate is a little fast. Pigeon is a Korean company that makes a very good extra slow flow nipple if we're having a baby that's really struggling.
I'm going to just say, call Jenny.
Yeah, right. No kidding.
Because that's helpful to just give some, initial thoughts. But I do feel like this is a world where you could spend a ton of money on different bottles.
Absolutely.
And just to be able to see them and have someone explain what you should be looking for and the different flow types and all that stuff, it's a lot to consider.
And then if we're talking bottles, then we've got the size of the bottle.
Yeah.
Most breastfed babies should take about 4 to 5 ounces a sitting. They shouldn't go up much higher than that. Human milk changes to meet baby's needs. So we don't need to increase the amount like we do with formula. Formula is the same nutritional content per ounce. So as baby grows, the volume needs to grow. You do not need 9-ounce bottles.
Okay. There you
So
go.
if you are feeding your milk or donor milk, you do not need to have these huge bottles. There's a lot of great options now in glass, which is nice. I'm glad to see that, some people are much more health conscious about what they're feeding from. So that's good that we've got some glass. Flow rate does not have to change. It's a misnomer. I feel like possibly trying not to be conspiracy-like, that the formula companies want you to feed your baby faster so that they seem like they're more hungry and then they eat more. We feel like they need more. It undermines mom's confidence. So I have, 8, 9, 10-month-old babies that are still on a slow flow nipple. As long as it's working for them, there is no reason to increase that flow rate. If I have a baby that's really struggling, maybe we do go up in flow rate a little bit just to see if that helps them struggle less.
Okay. And to round out this episode, I do want to have 2 final questions to ask. One of them is, what are your thoughts on pumping and dumping? And then the second one is, what is the proper way to dispose of your pump when you are done with it?
So pumping and dumping is usually a cover my backside kind of reaction from a healthcare provider that hasn't researched the medication that they're giving you. I have a huge book in my office from Dr. Hale that talks about medication in mother's milk. We have researched many of them, and we know that we don't have to pump and dump most of the time. My favorite is when you have surgery and they tell you that you need to pump and dump for 24 hours, and they didn't give you anything other than anesthesia and maybe an antibiotic. And anesthesia is metabolized when you wake up.
Oh, so it's gone.
So it's gone. And it doesn't sit in the milk. The body filters it out through the blood system. So that one's always kind of my, wait a minute, kind of moment. So if a mom wants to have a glass of wine, I suggest they feed the baby first, have the glass of wine. If you feel that you have some in your system yet, if you feel a little tipsy, if you feel like, I probably shouldn't drive, then I probably shouldn't feed my milk to my baby. Well, if we've got some in the freezer, we use our freezer milk, and then we just wait a couple hours and pump that milk. You don't have to dump it.
Okay.
And now what was the other?
The other one was about how do you properly dispose of a pump when you are done with it?
We really don't have a great way to dispose of those pumps. For a while, Medela was taking theirs back as kind of a refurbished kind of recycling program, but really it's an electronic device that would need to go to like an electronic recycling place.
Is it something that you can put on for free on Marketplace or give to a friend, or is it really this should not be shared from one person to another?
So earlier we talked about the life of a pump. There's sometimes a way to check how many hours a pump has run. So sharing one may seem like a great idea, but it may be at the end of its life anyways. So we want to make sure that it does a consistent job and a good job with the vacuum. There are non-sealed pumps, so there could be mold and gunk buildup in the pump. So a multi-user pump can be shared. But for most people, if you're able to get your own new pump, it's really the best way to go.
Okay, great. This was a very informative episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm like, again, I wish I had you when I was, a new mom. That would
And I can just say, I wish I had me too.
Oh, I know.
I didn't know what I know now.
Yeah, exactly.
And on the Motherhood Alliance site, under Jenni's profile, if you head there, she did do a recent blog article called Pump Smarter, Not Harder, How Proper Flange Fitting Boosts Comfort and Milk Supply. So definitely go and check that out. I think she has another blog on there too about breastfeeding in general and just how to navigate that. We covered that also in episodes 1 and 2. But we do have one more interesting episode coming up. I love these types of episodes where they're speaking to a specific population and specific situations that people are going through. And so our next episode is going to be induced lactation, relactation, post-surgery breastfeeding, just kind of navigating these interesting situations that different people experience in life. And Jenni's an expert on that, and we can't wait to bring her back for that one. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.